Welcome to the Railways of Scotland Volume 2, the Waverley route, which views the line from the late 1950s until its closure in 1969. The line's famous Edinburgh station, plus the border links with Sir Walter Scott and his Waverley novels, combined to give the route its name. Just over 98 miles in length, the line was opened throughout in 1862 by the North British Railway. The North British was to ultimately join forces with the Midland Railway to the south, after the opening of the Settle and Carlisle route some 10 years later. On reaching Edinburgh, the route joined the East Coast Main Line at Portobello East Junction for the final 3 miles to Edinburgh Waverley, passing beneath the ramparts of the former Calton Jail on the eastern approach to the station. Shortly after leaving Waverley Station, the main line reached St Margaret's Locomotive Depot. Indeed, the line split the depot in two. This depot supplied much of the motive power on the Waverley route until the depot's closure in April 1967, with Class B1, V2 and A3 being the principal locomotives turned out by St Margaret's in the 1960s. Eskbank and Dalkeith Station was on the outer suburbs of Edinburgh. "25 years of neglect have resulted in these scenes of decay, although the construction of a cycleway is bringing improvements. This scene in 1963, with the tidy but sadly almost empty platforms, is a stark contrast. Diesel services were introduced at an early stage on the Waverley, in the shape of Peaks and Sulzer Type 2s, plus of course the DMU. Although the steam enthusiasts may have objected, a driver's eye view was now possible to the travelling public. With just a view in mind, we join a southbound DMU just north of Fountain Hall as the train descends from the 800 feet Fallowhill summit. Fountain Hall was formerly a junction for the branch to Lauder, closed in 1958. Reaching the small wayside station of Stow, 27 miles from Edinburgh, we pause to compare the present views with the scene on a sunny day in 1959 as a stopping train for Carlisle enters the station, headed by Class A3 60068 Servisto. D49 Peebleshire enters Stow from the south later that same day. The first major station on the route was Galashiels. Sadly, the whole station site has been razed and little remains to show the railways passing. Galashiels was a sub-depot of St Margaret's and was used in its latter days for the storage of redundant A3 and A4 Pacifics. Immediately to the south of the station were sidings used by goods traffic. The small country town of Selkirk was served by a 4-mile branch line which diverged west from the main line a short distance south of Galashiels station. Filmed by a local cameraman, a scene of one of the final goods trains was recorded on its journey to Selkirk. The accompanying soundtrack was recorded at the time.
Slowly onto the main line. We have a yellow for the junction and we ease our way onto the branch. After a stop at the gasworks, we head away for Selkirk. The autumn colours glow warm through the mist shroud. Round by Nether Barns, and up to Abbotsford Ferry. We slow to a halt to allow the train crew to open and close the gates. And after climbing aboard, it's off once more. And now we approach Tweed Bridge. This would have once have been the junction for Peebles if the original plan had gone through. And we ease up to the gates at Lundin. And away again. Over the bridge at Brighuch, and slowly we see Selkirk in the distance, coming through the mist.
Returning to the main line, the imposing station building at Melrose, 3 miles further south, indicates the importance the North British Railway placed on the route. Restored from dereliction in the 1980s, the building now houses offices and a restaurant. Passenger trains had little time to reach speed before the market town of St Boswell's was reached. Viewed in 1961 from a farmer's merchant's at the rear of the station, a fascinating scene of rural railways unfolds as the locomotive shunts its solitary coach into the bay platform to await departure time to Kelso. St Boswell's was the junction station for the lines originally to Jedburgh, Kelso and Tweedmouth. The town boasted a relatively large station complete with a two-rod engine shed. As the main line is cleared, a northbound Carlisle to Edinburgh working enters the station, hauled by a Salter Type 2. At Kelso Junction, a mile south of St Boswell's, the line to Kelso and Tweedmouth diverged. From 1965, the line terminated at Kelso as a freight-only line, and eventually the line closed completely in March 1968. All intermediate stations between Kelso and St Boswell's closed in 1964, and as the branch line declined, priority was given to road traffic, which entailed the train crew operating level crossing gates themselves, as is shown here at Maxton. Despite the sunny conditions, Harsendine Station presents a sad sight, although it does possess the only remaining footbridge on the former Waverley route. The industrial town of Hawick, just over 50 miles south of Edinburgh, was the largest station on the route, and as such boasted an engine shed and a large goods depot which extended down to Dovemount Place, adjacent to the Edinburgh Road. In the mid-60s, several steam-hauled specials travelled the line. Blue Peter is seen entering Hawick from the north, and later on the southern outskirts of the town on the 8th of October 1966. in late 1968 a Class 40 was derailed just north of Hoyk Station. Assistance in the shape of the Carlisle-Kingmore crane was summoned, but local passengers had a taste of things to come as a bus service was hastily arranged as the line was temporarily closed. For trackline purposes, Hoyk possessed a small steam crane until 1965 and was filmed at work on the northern outskirts of Hoyk. To the south of the town was a now demolished Linwood Viaduct, demolished in 1982. This carried the line over Slitterig Water, and on this day a Dundee-Blackpool return special was seen, pulled by a pair of Claytons. 8 miles to the south of Hoyk was the isolated station at Shank End, with its magnificent 15-arch viaduct immediately to the north of the station. Located in an attractive but windswept setting, it was no surprise that traffic was sparse. A signalman filmed some of the routine workings on the line from the steps of his signal box, and in doing so captured superbly the atmosphere of a Borders country station. As this southbound express passes the signal box, note the novel method of delivering newspapers. Without the aid of a banker, frequently trains had to pull up at Shank End to raise steam in order to tackle the last part of the climb to Whitrope Summit. A rarely filmed but vital function was the work of the fitter, seen here greasing the signal cables. Typical of stations throughout Britain was the pick-up goods train, although the wooden-bodied horse box seen in this scene was a relative rarity. Whitrope Tunnel marked the end of the climb for engine crews, as it was only a short distance from the south portal, with its massive brick retaining walls, to the summit. At over 1,000 feet above sea level, the climb was a severe test for many machines, particularly in steam days. From high above the line, the tortuous climb to Riccarton and Whitrope Summit is clear, as a Class B2 slowly climbs to Riccarton Station on the 3rd of September 1966. The old Border Counties line becoming visible in the background as the engine approaches Riccarton Junction. The 7-mile-long branch line to Langham left the main line at Riddings Junction, just south of the Anglo-Scottish border. The Class 20, having left Carlisle-Kingmore freight yards, is seen here crossing the River Esk, as it heads north on the main line to Langham, Riddings Junction and Newcastleton, on a pick-up goods. This train normally returned to Carlisle in the mid-afternoon. The line crossed the River Liddle on a 9-arch viaduct, and in doing so crossed back into Scotland. This was the only Anglo-Scottish border crossing without a sign indicating the border. Passenger services ceased on the 13th of June 1964, with freight services lingering on until 1967. Steam power was normally an IBIT 260, but Class 20 shared the work. In these scenes, a brake van special was incorporated in the pickup goods. it was usual for the pickup goods to proceed to Newcastleton, north of Reading Junction, and to save the engine running round its train at Reading Junction, the conventional practice was to propel the wagons down the branch. Carlisle was the southern terminus for the line, with motive power being supplied from the ex-North British Carlisle Canal shed until its closure in 1963, at which point Kingmore Shed took over its duties. On the 8th of October 1966, when this film was taken, steam was still very much in evidence at Carlisle, although the contrast between the Britannia Pacific, shorn of its nameplates, and Blue Peter is striking. Blue Peter is seen backing into Kingmore Depot for servicing prior to working a special train on the Waverley route. Leaving Carlisle, the engine makes an impressive sight. On the last day of the route, Deltic locomotive, the King's Own Yorkshire Light Infantry, powered the last train to cover the route from Carlisle to Edinburgh. Filled to capacity, the train made an impressive sight, and again the soundtrack was recorded live. Crowds at Hoyk Station the day before closure, complete with the publicity coffin, await the arrival of the British Rail special, Farewell to the Waverley. The same day, a northbound privately run special heads towards Edinburgh, with every coach packed to capacity. Just before midnight at Hoyk on Sunday the 5th of January, large crowds were found waiting the arrival of the very last passenger working, the night Midlander sleeper. As the train arrived behind a peak number 60, Lytham St Anne's, trouble was expected, but none materialised. However, a large crowd stopped the train further south at Newcastleton, where the local minister, Reverend Mabon, led his parishioners in a last protest at the line's closure. We trust that you have enjoyed this look at the Waverley route, and we leave you with a final run from Carlisle to Edinburgh, recorded in November 1968, just weeks before the withdrawal of passenger services on the route.